Guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, How I Gutted My HOA. This is the story of how I completely changed out my community's HOA board and foreclosed on one of their houses after they disrespected me. Backstory. A few years ago, I bought my first house in a medium-size, 1,000 homes neighborhood in a southern state. It had an HOA, but I actually picked the neighborhood because they had the lowest HOA dues in the city, the fewest rules, and the house was by far the nicest one I could afford in my budget. After a few weeks, I get a violation notice from the HOA telling me that I had 2 violations needing correction. 1. My lawn was not green enough. 2. My trash cans were too close to my driveway. I was thoroughly confused about number 1 as it was February, in the middle of winter, so of course my lawn was dead, like pretty much everyone else's. So I had assumed that either this was a mistake or an existing offense from the previous owner. As for the trash cans, I kept them on the side of my house and I think when the HOA came by, my trash can stuck out past the sidewall around 1 foot, so how dare I? I shrugged them off and continued on. Come March, I got another notice, this time fining me for both violations. Each one cost me $100 and they wanted the money in 2 weeks. I was pissed. This has made no sense and I was not about to let them just try and get money for BS violations. So, I called the management company that worked with the board to get them appealed. The lady told me that I needed to appeal directly to the board, and that I could do so in the next annual meeting in a few days. So, I of course showed up to the meeting. Prior to it starting, I met with a few homeowners and learned that they were all there for similar BS violations and were pissed off too. I then talked with one of the members of the board about the fine appeals process. He was older guy in his 70s with short gray hair and a very worn and angry face. He asked what I was getting fined for, and when I told him, he just looked at me and said, "And you should get fined for that. Young people like you not taking care of their homes is the whole reason I got on this board. Learn to be a better property owner." This dude was the VP of a volunteer board telling me that I did not know how to take care of my house. What a sad life. The meeting then started, and the moderator mentioned that since this was an annual meeting, we would be voting on 3/5 board members. They had some applicants to the board, and we could also nominate someone today. That's when I had the idea of how I could get my revenge. When the election part of the meeting came, I nominated myself, gave some BS speech about HOAs are not here to make money and that I wanted to serve my community. I won in a landslide, and you could see the board members getting annoyed because they had scowled during my speech. After the meeting, I appealed my violations, in a very elegant way, and they agreed to waive my trash can violation. As for the grass one, apparently since I had weeds growing in my yard, like tiny patch in the corner, they were still fining me because the weeds were turning yellow after I sprayed them. I was dumbfounded how they could get away with this, but they used a technicality in the bylaws that I had signed, so I ended up losing $100. Revenge. I will be honest, I had not expected this to work. After joining the board of 5, including myself, I was appointed secretary and had to help maintain meeting notes and review records. They specifically told me that I was not allowed to propose new policies, but I could vote on new ones proposed by the VP or president, which I later learned was actually a violation of their own rules. I voted every new rule down as long as I was in that position. I decided that my best course of action was to listen to how the others operated and look for an opening to get each of them off the board. The first opening came when the president, who literally looked like the most Karen woman ever, mentioned that she had wanted to fine for flowers that were not neutral color. Basically, if a homeowner wanted to add something like turquoise flowers, we would fine them. She apparently had a neighbor that had flowers that she didn't like, and she wanted to use the board to stop them. It was pretty insane. I then started my revenge on her. I started a message thread, on Slack since that's how we communicated, with the other board members and asked what they had thought about her policy and reasoning. After far too much deliberation, 2 of them honestly thought that this was okay. We agreed that the policy went too far. I then made a long post in the main channel telling her that her actions were not only wrong, but that she should be excused from the board. When she inevitably flipped out, I called a board meeting in the following week, and the other 4 board members voted her off for targeting a community member for personal gain. She gave a sob story about how the board was her life and that the neighborhood was like her child, but I didn't care. That was one down. I convinced one of my good neighbor friends to join a little later on to take her spot. The next members I targeted were the treasurer and director, as I wanted to save the VP for last. They were actually pretty easy to get off the board because they were very easily swayed by public opinion. So, I made a fake account on Nextdoor and waited until spring, when most of the violations go out. When the letters went out, I looked for angry posts on Nextdoor. I then would comment on each one, giving them the first names of the 2 board members as the culprits and told them to come to the next HOA meeting to appeal. It worked far better than I had expected. During the next meeting, over 50 people showed up and called out those by name. It was glorious. During the open session, community members grilled those 2 for their poor policies, even though they did not make most of them. The VP, now president after the other one resigned, tried to defend them, but ultimately failed. The 2 members were so distraught after the meeting, and I told them that maybe they should resign, and they both did. That was 2 more down, both of which were replaced by a couple who came to the same meeting and wanted to get rid of these rules. Finally, the board had been flipped to 4 out of 5 people wanting to get rid of all these dumb rules. The president, however, was still same old angry hateful man. He tried to add more rules to increase violation revenue, and we voted him down every time. He started to get annoyed but stayed steadfast to the board. I tried a lot of tactics to get him to leave, and not much swayed him. A few months went by, and we started with a new management company. They had a much better style of property management and a website for looking through our community's records as well as automated reports. When we got our first fines report, I hit pay dirt. The president's house appeared, and he owed around $10,000. Apparently, he had open violations that he had never paid, and the other management company hid it from the board for him, since he had been on the board for close to 7 years. So, I looked into remedies. Since his fines were over $3,000, our bylaws stated that a majority vote of the board could start an HOA foreclosure on the home, which I still think is insane that HOAs can do that. So, I got all the docs together and double-checked with the new management company that the fines were correct, which they confirmed. I called an emergency board session, presented the information, and 4/5 of us voted to start the foreclosure process. The president got angry, cursed, and left the meeting early. We were informed a few days later that the president had resigned, paid his fine, and put his house up for sale. While I am sad, we couldn't force a foreclosure, at least he was off the board. I am currently president to this day, and I have reduced the fining policy to be a maximum of $400, and homeowners can appeal any time that they wish digitally. In addition, I have banned any grass fines until May, and trash can violations have been super relaxed. Morale of the story: never fine me $200, call me a stupid young kid, and expect to not lose your house. The next story is titled, Problems Often Have Natural Solutions. I live on a quiet street on the very outer reaches of suburbia. Now the houses here are all built, or rebuilt, early to mid-2000s, so now is more or less the time where some age-related renovations and whatnot are taking place. So, there are more work trucks parked around the last couple of years than in the years before. For the most part, everyone gets on with their neighbors. Now the neighbor opposite decided it was time for his house to get a redo, which it does need. It was starting to look a bit rough around the edges. He'd bought it to rent out, and 15 years of tenants will leave its scars. So, he hires a company to do it, which is a pretty normal thing to do when you own a rental house because they make sure building codes are adhered to. And normally this would not even be a story, except the contractor hired the laziest folk imaginable. A 25-yard walk is unacceptable even when it's in the 60s F, around 18C. So, they park next to and opposite the house. Which means they park right in front of my house and opposite my house. That makes getting in and out of my house impossible unless you're on a bike or a very small car because you can't make the turn. Requests to park elsewhere are listened to and professionally ignored. This affects others too, as sometimes they leave such a narrow space to drive past that some people don't want to risk it. For context, they are parking proper, man-sized, pickup trucks, F350, etc. So not exactly small vehicles but not huge semis either. The owner of the house actually is understanding and has told them to park elsewhere, but he lives a good 60 to 70 miles away and can't be here every day to keep them in line. Each complaint sees them park in better locations for 1 or 2 days before things get annoying again. This has been going on since early March. Complaints get nowhere. The police don't care much about this kind of thing as it's a private road. I was staring out the window noticing all the birds in my tress which always come at this time of year. Then I got an idea. My property front is lined with 3 massive trees with their branches hanging well over the street. It provides great shade in the hotter months. But how to get more birds into my trees? I'm not a bird person, but motivation and Google can get you quite far in life, and so I learned exactly what birds are around right now and how to best lure them. Then I went and bought tons of bird feeding things. Boatloads of them, and stuff to get them safely into the trees. I had around 100 of them up in those trees and it took me the whole day on Friday. On Saturday I was out, but on Sunday I noticed more birds than usual, but as there are usually many birds chirping in late March, I couldn't be sure. But Monday was filled with a cacophony of biblical proportions. And the trucks returned and parked in their usual antisocial spots somewhere around 8 a.m. The trees filled up with birds around 9 to 10 a.m. and started gorging themselves on the now insane amounts of food. I was in my kitchen watching as the guys came to their trucks for lunch at 1 p.m. I heard their swearing clearly through closed windows. I had a peek, and their trucks were absolutely covered in shit. I literally, really mean, absolutely covered. The hood, roof, the bed, any equipment in the bed, the windshield, mirrors, door handles, everything was covered in bird shit. Lots of it. It was horrifically awesome. It took them an hour to clean enough of it off just so they could drive as you couldn't clear the windows using the wipers. It's Wednesday today and their trucks are now parked far away. Driving past you can clearly see that there are still signs of Monday's carnage on them. But apart from some nasty looks, no one has said a word. Not one word. It's petty but it made me feel very satisfied. The next story is titled, "Your Friends Won't Stop Parking in My Driveway? Congrats, your parents know you vape at 16. My neighbors have a teenage son whose friends keep parking in my driveway. I went to check my mail last week and saw them all out front and decided to nicely bring it up, which was met with eye rolls and fake okays. Monday comes around and I come home to find 3 of his friends' cars taking all the space I have to park. It was a 14-hour day for me, so I wasn't having it and made my second approach with intention to make myself very clear and said I'd make it the neighbor's son's problem. Tonight, I get home and it's happened again. I went next door and an adult finally answered. I brought up the cars at my place and added a side note their kid never expected. He's also been throwing his disposable vapes in my yard and I have the other neighbor as a witness. So, I casually asked them to make sure that stops, and the instant change in expression told me everything I needed to know after I walked away. Shortly after his friends left, and I can assume they probably won't be back for a while. Happy spring break, kid." The next story is titled, "Don't Remove the Stickers." I work at a small ski and snowboard shop, and one of the services we offer is a seasonal lease program. For those of you unaware, ski and board equipment can be very expensive, and that means sometimes the sport prices itself out of the picture for some people. We're really proud that we can offer a full package to be taken home and used as many, or as little, times as the customer would like. All for less than the price of buying just a pair of ski boots. This program does come with some caveats. One of them is the tip of every ski we rent out has a 3-inch by 3-inch sticker without logo on it. That sticker does double duty by both, giving us some free advertising, and declaring ownership if the skis get left behind at a resort. At the end of the season, we get a bunch of phone calls from mountains saying, "We've got your skis, come get them." As a result, it's really important to us that customers keep our stickers on the skis. Sometimes, however, customers don't want to look like they're on rental equipment in front of their friends. This is specifically a problem in high school and college-age humans. Often, they will attempt to remove our stickers. However, the ones we use are very heavy-duty and removal of them usually entails chisels and a good amount of time. That said, every year there are close to 100 pair of skis someone puts that effort into. We've tried everything over the years to entice people to leave the stickers alone, from fees, to rewards, to a spot the sticker giveaway program. This year though I may have cracked the code. Underneath the stickers this year I stenciled the word left. I labeled 6,000 skis, 3,000 pairs, left, and 0 skis, right. Now, most skis no longer have left and rights, so the word has no bearing on performance. it's there purely to frustrate sticker removers. All season I've been enjoying customers come in complaining of having 2 left skis. I smugly smile and say, our rental skis don't have left and right. We just write that on the tips to catch people who remove the stickers. But yesterday my plan exceeded my wildest hopes. I had a customer come in to return his equipment and he informed me that he removed the stickers back in December, and almost instantly regretted it. He had spent every chairlift ride for the duration of the winter explaining to total strangers that he knows both his skis say left. And no, he doesn't have 2 left feet, and yes, he's horrible at dancing, but not because of that. In addition, he was in a seasonal instructed ski group with his fiancée, some friends, co-workers. Apparently after day 1 of an 8-week program his group's assigned instructor Nick named him Lefty. His fiancée started calling him Lefty, as did his co-workers. Upon returning to work the story was told to his boss, and it's now the how his everyone at his job distinguishes him from the other employee he works with who shares the same real first name. The last story is titled, Coworker tried to claim my 15-page report as her own work to the CEO, got outed in front of him. This was a young woman who only got her job, especially made for her, because her dad was golfing buddies with our CEO. She regularly blamed her team for her numerous mistakes and took all the credit for their hard work. Let's call her Witch. I used to do trade shows and after the fall season would be back in the office and create a comprehensive report on the results of the shows, normally 15+ pages. The VIPs always wanted paper reports, not attachments, so I normally printed them out and distributed them personally to the staff. I handed Witch her copy as we passed in the corridor, then watched in sheer amazement as she marched straight into the CEO's office and said, I kid you not. Here boss, I just put this together for you. Stunning, the report was all about trade shows, and she wasn't even in the same department. Cue the revenge. I marched in there right after her, and said, oh, Witch, I just realized that my report has some numerical errors. Let me have it back and I'll get you a revised one, all the while staring at the CEO with a slightly raised eyebrow. As I left, I heard the most wonderful words from the CEO. Aiku, would you please close the door as you leave? Witch came out about 5 minutes later looking like a ripe tomato. I couldn't resist asking, how is your little tete-a-tete with our boss? Thank you for listening.